heard you've climbed over at the Thumb and the Needle. What year was that?
That was when I was in college, which would have been 48 in Boulder, from 48 to 52. And we would come up here during quarter breaks in the winter and climb logs and just hang out. And sometimes we just wander around and find things to climb. And one day we were walking in we stayed at, was the old Hughes Kirkwood Inn, because Julia Morrissey, the lady that sort of was the caretaker there, and allegedly maybe a bit of a partner for either Hughes or Kirkwood, I don't know. But just a robust, seemed like an old woman at the time, but a wonderful lady. And she'd let us stay and put our bags down on the floor of the inn and stay there. And so one day Bob Riley and I were walking into town for some reason. We were trying to hitchhike into town, but in the winter there wasn't much traffic on these roads. So we ended up walking the whole way from Long's Peak base basically into town, and we saw those rocks up on the hill there, and we thought, well, why don't we go up and check those out? So we hiked up to the base of the little one, the lower one, and I guess it would be the east side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember, and I was leading, and this was in, lugged boots back in those days. There was nothing, and I think we did have a rope, fortunately. And I got up onto a sort of a little overhang where I didn't quite have the guts to make the move, and no way to put in any protection above it. So I hung there for a long time until finally I said, I think I've got to come down. And so as I unfolded my hand, as I started to come down, my hands just unfolded. They'd been just sort of locked into this position, and down I whooshed and hit a down-sloping slab and slid away.
Holy shit.
And the rope caught me. These were, I'm not even sure if they were nylon ropes back then. Yeah, they may have been just manila ropes. But anyway, the rope, I think, fractured about 3 of my ribs. So we had to get back down and walk down to the road, walk into town, and go to Doc Mall. And he put 3 pieces of tape on my ribs. $6. I thought, that's for 3 pieces of tape? $2 a strip? And so that was my introduction to what we sort of began to call Tom's Thumb.
Was that the first attempt?
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea I'm not sure anybody had ever bothered, even thought of wanting to go up there to climb on them.
Did you go back and finish the ascent?
Yeah, eventually I went back there and climbed it. And I think it's about a 5-7 route or something nowadays. But, and we didn't, the Thumb, what is now known as the Thumb, we didn't actually climb on back in those days, though that's become the major target. But the Thimble has some nice little routes on it, and some that are, for me, totally out of sight. Most of them are now totally out of sight, I fear. And then I wasn't back here then until after 73, until Jim Detterline put on this historical symposium in 91. And he had seen these 3 old guys who were at the time 80, which I thought was ancient back then, show up at the ranger station, and they were having a sort of reunion, and their names were Hull Cook, who was a physician surgeon in Nebraska, Ev Long, who runs the Irish garden, or actually now his daughter does. Ev is gone, but it was that Irish garden just off on Broadway. Had been family for years, and my mother in St. Louis would buy various hybrid orchids or irises from them. Anyway, that was the second one. And the third one was a guy named Clarence Zumwalt, otherwise known as Zumie. And his buddies named that little pinnacle to the left of the diamond up there after Zumie's thumb. And then many years later, after I'd climbed Everest, well, those three guys were at this 91 event, and I met all three of them, but Zumie was this effervescent, bubbly, wonderful character. And, we all fell in love with each other. And he'd come out every summer until his death in '85. And then Jim and I, anyway, I made the first ascent of Zumie's thumb in 1951, I think, with Harry Waldrop and Duck Sprinker, who were at that time also climber rescue types at Boulder. And when Zumie sent me a copy of my West Ridge book to sign, I wrote in it, "To Zumie, whose thumb I knew long before the rest of it." But he was a very inspirational guy, and he'd had prostate cancer. His wife had died about 9 years earlier, and he'd become involved with the Audubon Canyon Ranch, which is a egret and heron rookery north of SF on the coast near Bolinas. He was sort of their chief naturalist in those latter years. And just to get to have him in my life for 5 years after having given all these lectures about these guys when I was a park naturalist and never having seen any of them was a real treat.
Cool.
And so he had his bladder or stoma of his ileal bladder, and had some surgery and went into renal shutdown, from which he could have recovered, I think, but he sort of woke up after dialysis and said, I don't need this. So I flew down from Seattle, and his friends from down there came out, and we took him home to his home in Greenbrae in Marin, and laid him out in his hospital bed there under Mount Tam, and all of his friends came in to say goodbye, and it was a party. He was a very special part of my life. So, and it was Jim's inviting me out to that event, and then, of course, when I did my little show and tell after Paul Stetner was there, he was 85 at the time, and then these three guys who were all 80, and then I guess I was probably the next generation down. And what I talked about with a wonderful set of pictures that a buddy took from across the notch on the main mountain of us climbing it, was I talked about climbing Zumie's thumb. And then after he died, Jim and I and another ranger went back with Kathy and my daughter Melissa and another daughter, Andrea, coming along for the walk. And Jim and I and his partner, we climbed Zumie again on a kind of a day like this, weird and cloudy, and just sort of a spooky day, but a decent day, and took some of Zumie's ashes up and left them on the top of the hill.
Nice.
So that's Zumie.